Okay, welcome to podcast number 2. Today I'm talking about PCOS, just a really high overview of PCOS, and I'll probably branch off and talk about some of the things I feel like contribute to our body's systems that can cause PCOS. And again, this is my take on it. So if you have PCOS or you think you have PCOS, I hope that you listen all the way through. If you don't know what it is and think someone else might have it, make sure you send them this. I do have to say just a little disclaimer that I am not a medical expert. I am not a doctor. I am not licensed in any way to cure or prevent or diagnose PCOS. I am just talking about what I've learned through my experience and research. Okay? So here, let's get started. So I will go back a few years and talk about what led up to me being diagnosed with PCOS, just so you have some background on it. In 2014, I was diagnosed with postpartum depression 4 months after giving birth to my firstborn. That was kind of hard in and of itself to get through. And so they gave me an antidepressant. But with the antidepressant, through the course of a year, I still kept having really severe episodes of depressive behavior. So they kept increasing my dose. I went through 3 increases in 1 year. And what happened was I was also gaining weight. All the baby weight that I lost, I had actually gained back in that year, which was obviously disheartening. I finally found out that that particular brand of birth control was making me gain weight, which, it sucks so bad. So luckily I found out it wasn't me, it was actually the antidepressant. So at the same time I was going through the increases of medication, dealing with postpartum, I was having heavy periods, and I just thought it was because I just had a baby. But these heavy periods would last weeks and weeks. I would maybe have a week without a period, but they ended up just getting heavier and heavier up until I had Arthur. So when I was pregnant, right? So then I didn't have periods when I was obviously pregnant. And then I had Arthur 2 years, so I had him in 2016, right? And once I had him, the bleeding came back. And again, I just thought it was me and having babies. I have to say, I was on my antidepressant while pregnant with Arthur. They said it was better for me to be on it. So had Arthur, bleeding came back really bad. I couldn't lose any weight. It was so hard to lose weight. And then I started to lose hair. And just to give you an idea of how much hair I was losing, I would keep an empty shampoo bottle in the shower. And so every time hair fell out in the shower, I'd pick it up and put it in this empty shampoo bottle. And when 3 and 4 weeks, the shampoo bottle would be full of hair. I still do that now. And I've just learned to be okay with losing hair. It's not thick and lush as it used to be. So with the hair loss and not being able to lose weight, I finally went to my doctor and they just did, I saw 3 different doctors. First was my primary care. She just did a blood panel mainly to check my thyroid levels and also to check for uterine fibroids through an ultrasound. So I didn't have fibroids. My thyroid levels were back. My blood panel was fine. And then with my gyno, we did a biopsy down there, which if you're a girl and you have to do a biopsy down there, it's horrible. And plus I was bleeding, so that was totally embarrassing. So it turned out that my bleeding was called, or is called, adenomyosis, where the blood pools in the muscles around my uterus, so like the natural shedding that your uterus is supposed to do. My cycle was completely off, clearly, but then the blood would just stay there in massive amounts, and then every time I moved, then I would have, a gushing, for lack of a better term. So I never really got relief, really, ever. So that's when they gave me the diagnosis of PCOS, because of the way my cycle was so irregular. And then my biopsy also came back non-precancerous, which was good. So the decision I had to make was to stop the bleeding, to have a hysterectomy. But then it would also be a final solution. So a hysterectomy, if you don't know what it is they take out your uterus. And it also meant that I had to think about not having kids anymore. And so that was in the fall, and I went through the entire winter just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Still bleeding. I haven't made any decisions yet. So after winter was done, I went back to my doctor, and he suggested I go on birth control to try and balance my hormones a bit. It was like the patch. So we did the patch for about 6 months. My periods didn't last 3 weeks like they used to, but they were still heavy. So the hormones were trying to do their work. But what happened was I kind of effed it up a little bit, and I thought I was doing something good for myself. So within 3 months, in that 6-month period, I took a supplement called DHEA, which I thought was supposed to help me with my mood swings. But what ended up doing was fighting with the birth control, and the hormones that were already imbalanced were being imbalanced more, and I was making more male testosterone hormones. So yeah, so all of a sudden I was like not bleeding, like there was no bleeding, which is not a good thing either. But it was just like the fight that my hormones were having, and basically I made things worse. So I kind of messed with my hormone system, which is called the endocrine system. So the bleeding did finally come back, and it came back worse than it had ever been. Like so much. Like when you're a teenager and you bleed through your pants like that, but think of that every day for 3 weeks. So bad. So at this point I am 39 years old, right? So I've dealt with this since I was, when did I have Charlotte? 33, 34 for 5 years. All this bleeding. And at 39, I didn't want to be a 40-year-old with a newborn. So I said, let's do the hysterectomy. It was scheduled for August 2020. And then 2 weeks before the date, I had a pre-op checkup, and they told me my insurance wanted another option before they would approve a hysterectomy. So instead, we got rid of the birth control patch, and they did a hysteroscopy, so I had to get under anesthesia, and they placed an IUD specifically on my uterus to stop the bleeding that I had. And because they diagnosed me with PCOS and I wasn't losing weight, they gave me metformin to control my ovaries insulin resistance. So I've got the IUD, now I'm on metformin, I still on my antidepressant, and they also gave me spironolactone, which is supposed to help with the male testosterone levels. But that stuff is really stinky. I mean, I did not like it. I actually stopped taking it because it was such a stinky pill. And I don't think it was really helping me. Maybe it was, I don't know. But it was one of those things where if I can control what prescription I was taking, I didn't want to take spironolactone. So then I just went into this crazy rabbit hole phase of trying to figure out what PCOS was and how to manage the symptoms and how to lose weight. And I was doing keto because I had read that keto helped a lot with PCOS weight management, but it was working, but it's one of those things where, and what I've learned through the years, where it just, the stress of dieting doesn't help anything, right? And then I was still having a amount of hair loss and acne. Like, some of my acne was like cystic. It was really bad. Like a teenager. So bad. So I've just been trying to navigate and manage all of my symptoms. I've gotten to a point now where I feel good about the supplements I'm taking, some of the changes I've made in my diet, and some of the weight management choices as well. Okay, so let's talk about PCOS. Okay. What is PCOS? Okay, PCOS is polycystic ovary syndrome, and it affects 1 in 10 women of childbearing age, which, as I read, it's about 15% of women. And that could be understated because there's so many women that go undiagnosed. But it's still 1 in 10 women who have been diagnosed. That's crazy, of childbearing age. So it starts as soon as you start your period. You can have PCOS. So our teenagers might be dealing with it. So you have got to pay attention to their symptoms. It's a hormonal disorder characterized by cysts on the ovaries, irregular periods, and excessive projection of androgens, which are the male hormones. Many small sacs of fluid develop along the outer edge of the ovary. These are called cysts. The small fluid-filled cysts contain immature eggs. These are called follicles. The follicles fail to regularly release eggs, and the ovaries produce eggs for fertilization, and they make the hormones estrogen and progesterone. Super important in women. When your hormones are affected with PCOS, your ovaries can produce excess androgens instead of their normal follicle-stimulating hormones. Altogether, there are 4 types of PCOS subtypes. So you're diagnosed with PCOS, and then there's like a subtype in which they kind of put you in, like the majority of your symptoms, this is what type of PCOS you have, but it's actually a combination of things. Some people might have some of this, some people might have some of this, so as I'm reading it, and if you have PCOS or you think you have PCOS, you might kind of fall into one or more of these subtypes. So the first type is insulin-resistant PCOS. Insulin-resistant PCOS, it's the most common type. It affects 70% of women. This prevents ovulation. High insulin levels prevent ovulation and activate testosterone production. And this is a huge hurdle for women managing their blood sugar and weight. The second type is inflammatory PCOS. It is a chronic low-grade inflammation, and you'll get things like unexplained fatigue, bowel problems. You'll have autoimmune diseases like thyroid, Hashimoto's disease, headaches, joint pain, and you'll get it's paired with chronic skin conditions like psoriasis, eczema, or hives. It's closely associated with chronic low-grade inflammation. People with PCOS often, so in general, people with PCOS often have higher levels of certain inflammatory markers in their blood. Chronic inflammation can persist for months or even years, can impact various aspects of health. Lifestyle factors, oxidative stress, obesity, and psychological stress contribute to this type of inflammation. Also, lifestyle factors and environmental toxins play a role with the inflammatory PCOS. Okay, and then the third type is adrenal PCOS. This is less common. It's associated with adrenal gland dysfunction. Adrenal PCOS is similar to the genetic condition late onset congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or CAH for short. The adrenal glands are two small glands that sit on top of your kidneys. They produce hormones like cortisol and adrenaline that help your body respond to stress and regulate metabolism. In this subtype of PCOS, when androgens are released during the stress response, they are converted to testosterone without any involvement with insulin and independent from the ovaries. As a result, you could have no insulin resistance and normally functioning ovaries, but still present symptoms of PCOS. And the fourth one is the fourth subtype of PCOS, which is new to me. Over the last 5 years, this one is new to me. It's called post-pill PCOS. It's temporary. It occurs after stopping birth control pills. That temporary surge in androgens is enough to qualify for the diagnosis of PCOS or post-pill PCOS. You have post-pill PCOS if you meet the criteria for PCOS, which is excess androgens and other conditions. Plus you do not have insulin resistance. And then some symptoms start dissipating when you come off the pill. So experts say just stay calm and know the symptoms are part of a temporary drug withdrawal process, right? So those are the four types. I fall into the insulin resistant type and the inflammatory type. So I have the two most common subtypes mixed together. So insulin resistance and inflammatory. The adrenal one, I think, is becoming more common as people start talking about cortisol and adrenaline and stress regulation. Okay, so what are the symptoms? How do you know if you have PCOS? And I would say if you can check off most of these, go get tested. So the testing involves blood panels, an ultrasound, maybe a pelvic exam. I would say just do it and rule out what you may or may not have while you're doing all these tests. So symptoms include irregular or missed periods, facial hair. I never had the facial hair or the back hair, but it seems pretty common overall. Thinning hair on the head, acne, mood changing, sleep problems, infertility, depression, weight gain, and fatigue. Yeah. So let's think about this as a woman. Like, how many of these do we just have on the daily and we just are working through it? We're just going through our daily lives. And that's why I feel like PCOS is undiagnosed, because women specifically, just are like, this is how I am every day, and I am functioning without really doing the deep dive on what's the root cause here. Why am I this way, right? Fatigue, weight gain, depression, sleep problems, mood changes. I mean, that's like all of us, right? But there's a underlying issue there. Okay, so I want to talk about the endocrine system really quick, because this is where I feel strongly how PCOS symptoms are exacerbated. And that's why I said we need to change how we consume things in our environment and start with our babies. So, Endocrinology and Metabolism Clinics of North America states PCOS is a leading cause of anovulatory infertility, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. It is a syndrome, a collection of signs and features of unknown causes, origins, or reasons. Despite its high prevalence and major morbidities, affected women remain remarkably undeserved. Diagnosis is frequently delayed, and physicians are often poorly informed about PCOS. So I would say in the last 5 years, there has been a lot more information about PCOS, and it actually hasn't come from doctors. It's come from just me searching out, the World Wide Web, and just trying to find answers from people who have done some research. And some of them could be medical experts. But if you go and talk to your doctor about it, they're going to have very vague answers for you. And some of them will actually teach you or treat you like you're just whining, like the WW, the whining woman syndrome, that they characterize perimenopause and menopausal women. So you got to find a primary care physician that you trust to help you discuss the symptoms. And now I would say more than ever, there are endocrinologists out there. They're hard to get into. It's such a specialty. And I know this, I have to wait 2 months to get into one right now, that will understand you the best, right? They're not going to cure anything. It's not a curable syndrome, but they will at least have some understanding. And you go to the endocrinologist because your endocrine system is like your system of communication in your body, right? So the causes, like how I've just talked about, is of unknown causes, origins, or reasons. The exact cause is unknown, but factors may include excess androgen, so male hormone production by the ovaries. It could be genes, so hereditary genes linked to PCOS, and maternal exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals. So those are some of the causes that they think contribute to PCOS. And then low-grade inflammation. Low-grade inflammation can cause PCOS. Low-grade inflammation can stimulate the ovaries to make too much testosterone. It's a chronic response that produces a steady, low level of inflammation throughout the body. Unlike acute inflammation, which helps the body heal and then turns off, chronic inflammation persists for months or even years. It can damage tissues and is associated with conditions like type 2 diabetes, cancer, and cardiovascular diseases. The low-grade inflammation is associated also with altered cognitive functions, so brain health, and then Also, in summary, understanding the relationship between inflammation and cognition is crucial for both disease management and potential therapeutic strategies. Okay, and some causes of inflammation. So now you have a cause of inflammation where inflammation is also a cause of PCOS. See how it kind of all is interconnected. Some causes for chronic low-grade inflammation include your diet, consuming foods that fuel inflammation, smoking, tobacco smoke triggers inflammation, alcohol, excessive alcohol use, obesity. Being overweight or obese is linked to chronic inflammation. So just being overweight or obese is linked to chronic inflammation. They're like partners in crime. And then environmental triggers. Exposures to pollutants and toxins can cause inflammation as well. And so now we've talked about inflammation and it could lead to PCOS. Now, what can PCOS lead to in the future? Increased risk of endometrial cancer, infertility, obesity-related conditions, high blood pressure, heart problems, diabetes. So you can have PCOS with high blood pressure or PCOS with heart problems, or you can actually just get diabetes, right? And then possible increased risk of breast cancer. There's no definitive test for PCOS. It's basically just a bunch of stuff and trying to rule out things. There's medical history, physical exams, hormone tests, and ultrasounds. And then treating PCOS. So treating is basically a lifetime of managing your symptoms. I think there are claims out there that say you can reverse your PCOS. I'm not quite sure I believe that quite yet, just because medical studies have not found definitive answers. I mean, how to test for it. They don't even have a definitive cause for it. So I'm not going to say there's a definitive reversal of it, but just remember it's a whole management lifestyle. So treatments are lifestyle changes, weight management, exercise, healthy diet, medication, birth control pills, anti-androgens, fertility drugs, also insulin sensitizing agents, which, like me, I'm taking the metformin, and most people get on metformin. And then procedures, ovarian drilling, that helps with ovulation and controls androgen production, mainly used for infertility cases. Hysterectomy, removing the uterus, will stop bleeding issues and any pelvic pain related to the uterus, but it isn't likely to resolve any other symptoms of PCOS. And then you gotta just remember it's very much a focused management. If sometimes you'll just start with one thing, you might just start with the obesity part of it, you might just start with the acne part of it, or the hair loss, or the infertility. So you go into a focused treatment, one thing at a time. And then the other one is hormone therapy. Progesterone is a big hormone that helps women. It plays a crucial role in balancing androgens in women. And here's how. It reduces testosterone. Progesterone helps decrease testosterone production. It reduces the impact of androgens on the body. And it helps bone health. Is essential for sleep and cardiovascular. So progesterone is a huge thing, and if it's being pushed out by male hormones, you can see how the imbalance makes us moody and tired and fatigued and depressed. Okay, so I want to talk about as we're talking about managing symptoms and how we can help our babies at the same time. And I believe this wholeheartedly, that it starts with treating your endocrine system nicely, right? So the main function of our endocrine system is to release hormones into your blood while continuously monitoring the levels. The digestive tract is the largest endocrine-related organ system in the body. It makes and secretes several different types of hormones that play a role in the body's metabolism. In the United States, the most common endocrine disease is diabetes. There are many others. They are usually treated by controlling how much hormone your body makes, right? So that's why the metformin. First of all, eat a healthy diet so as to maintain a healthy weight and balanced chemical secretions from the system. So eat a healthy diet is their main advice. Okay, so PCOS is associated with several endocrine and metabolic factors. Here are some key connections. Androgen excess. PCOS often involves elevated androgen male hormone levels, contributing to symptoms like hair loss and acne. Insulin resistance. Many women with PCOS experience insulin resistance or elevated insulin levels, which can worsen androgen excess. Your brain pituitary ovary communication. Abnormalities in how the brain or pituitary gland communicate with the ovaries may lead to androgen overproduction. Miscommunication of your brain, pituitary, and ovary, like a dysfunctioning office, right, can lead to androgen overproduction, can lead to the old man's club. That's what I'm going to call it. Genetics. PCOS, so your endocrine system and some of the dysfunction can be passed down. So genetics, PCOS tends to run in families, suggesting a genetic component. Female relatives or children of patients with PCOS are at increased risk for having PCOS. And then environmental factors, low birth weight, rapid weight gain in infancy, childhood obesity, and an unhealthy lifestyle may interact with genes. So environmental factors may interact with genes to contribute to PCOS. And this is very interesting. So there's this lady who, her theory is it's not genetics, it's environmental factors through the maternal exposure to the fetus. So maternal fetal interaction, that's her theory. So that it's not genetic and that it's all about the environment when pregnant mom is carrying the baby. And I tend to side with her theory. Again, just because PCOS is so, everything is like unknown cause, unknown cure, unknown everything. I just don't know if genetics is really a strong connection for PCOS. So she talks about maternal exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals during pregnancy can impact both the mother and the developing fetus. Here's what we know. Fetal susceptibility. Pregnant fetuses are susceptible to environmental influences. EDCs, which are called endocrine disrupting chemicals, can cross the placenta and potentially harm fetal and embryonic development. It's a cumulative burden. During gestation, fetuses are subjected to the cumulative maternal body burden of EDCs. These chemicals include polyfluoroalkyl and organochlorine compounds. Your adverse outcomes, exposure to EDCs may disrupt the maternal fetal milieu, leading to adverse pregnancy and birth outcomes. Such outcomes are considered a risk factor for adult onset non-communicable diseases, and research continues to explore the mechanisms and effects of EDC exposure during pregnancy to mitigate potential harm. So I don't think I even knew that when I was pregnant, like environmental factors. I thought it was just food, right? I mean, if some of you know, I was eating taco time all the time with Charlotte. And then with Arthur, it was ice. I ate a lot of ice. You just don't think about it when you're going outside. So let's talk about our environment and what disruptors and substances and consumables are out there that are potentially harming our babies, our girls, and giving them PCOS symptoms. And then they get worse as they get older. Endocrine disruptors are substances that interfere with the body's hormonal system. They can mimic, block, or alter the function of natural hormones. Here are some common environmental factors that disrupt the endocrine system. Atrazine, a widely used herbicide in agriculture. And this is why we don't buy avocados from Mexico, because if it's not grown in the U.S., those imported produce, they are sprayed like none other, and then they have to pass an inspection test to get into the U.S. You don't know how many times those things have been sprayed, or you just don't know. So stay away from avocados from Mexico. Try to buy U.S. raised produce. Bisphenols, which is BPA, found in plastics, food packaging, and canned goods. And we always see BPA free. But I will talk about that because it's BPA free doesn't mean it's still safe. Dioxins, byproducts of certain manufacturing processes. Perchlorate, an industrial chemical used in explosives and fireworks. PFAs used in various industrial applications. Phthalates found in plastics, cosmetics, and fragrances. Phytoestrogens, naturally occurring compounds in some plants. So I'm not quite sure what plants have the phytoestrogens, but that is something you can look into on your own. The top source of dioxins, so dioxins is, again, byproducts of certain manufacturing processes. The top sources of dioxins released into the air in the United States include municipal solid waste, incinerators, secondary copper smelting, and medical waste incinerators. Combustion processes account for nearly 80% of air emissions. Combustion processes account for nearly 80% of air emissions. That's bananas. So let's think about that. Cars, carbon, combustion processes account for nearly 80% of air emissions. It's so many things, right? Additionally, human exposure to dioxins primarily occurs through the intake, listen to this, of meat and animal fats, dairy products, fish, and shellfish. Dioxins are found in the food that we eat. Yep. Microplastics. Okay, so microplastics, this is why I say BPA is not, when you see BPA free, doesn't mean that it's still safe, because there's still microplastics compounded to make it BPA free. Microplastics are tiny particles that are often invisible to the naked eye. They can indeed leach toxic chemicals into your skin. These microscopic particles can enter our bodies through water and air. Not only do they pose a health risk on their own, but they also carry harmful chemicals. So I also think like pools and splash pads. The toxins can find their way into your bloodstream via our skin. It's essential to be mindful of our exposure to microplastics and take steps to minimize it. If you just Google microplastics, and you will be overwhelmed in how much plastic we consume through food. The way food is processed, so when you're talking about processed food, those machines get heated, those plastics get leached into the food. Yeah, okay. And talk about heating. Microplastics can indeed pose risk to our health, and heat plays a role in their danger. When microplastics are heated, they can release harmful chemicals like BPA. For this reason, it's advisable to avoid microwaving food in plastic containers. You know me, I always say do not heat in plastic. Any plastic, even if it says BPA free. Even if it's a carton, like Michelinas or something, and it has like that shiny lining, that's plastic. Opt for ceramic or glass instead to minimize exposure to these potential toxins. And then when I first found out about endocrine disruptors, one of the first things I did was change my shower curtain. Yep. Hanging your shower curtain can help reduce exposure to microplastics. Here's why. Some shower curtains are made of plastic materials that can release microplastics into the air and water during use. When exposed to heat and humidity in the bathroom, these plastic curtains may degrade and shed tiny particles. Opt for non-plastic alternatives such as fabric or natural fiber curtains. So we did fabric, and I just wash it every few months. And then look for curtains made of materials like cotton, hemp, or polyester. And then wash them regularly. Regardless of the material, wash your shower curtain regularly to prevent mold and mildew buildup, obviously. And ventilation. Ensure proper bathroom ventilation to reduce humidity and prevent degradation of materials. Most plastic shower curtains are made from PVC, and PVC can release harmful microplastics into the environment. PVC contains toxic chemicals like phthalates, which are endocrine disruptors and may negatively impact health. Additionally, PVC curtains are not sustainable and they're not recyclable. So go for an eco-friendly alternative like hemp, linen, or organic cotton. Okay, and now let's talk about toys, because we see all these toys recycled from plastics or natural plastic toys or blah, 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 blah. I was always leery of those to begin with, always. So I never bought into it. But plastics commonly used in toys can contain EDCs. These harmful substances interfere with the body's hormone systems and may lead to health issues. So here are some key points. Phthalates used as plasticizers to make toys flexible and durable. PFAs found in nonstick plastics. Biphenyls used in some plastics, including baby bottles and food containers. Recycled plastic toys can expose children to high levels of toxic compounds because of the way they're processed, the combustion process of recycling, right? The dioxin-like compounds that are released into the air and then also absorbed back into the toys. And teethers. Some teethers release EDCs, including parabens and unidentified disruptors. So that's why I said we have to start with our babies.
If you look below this YouTube, you will actually see my sourcing of the information I have presented on some of these things.
Okay, so I just had a really high overview of what PCOS is. Hopefully that gave you some insight and clarification. If you think you have it, definitely go talk to your doctor. It is manageable. Like I said, I don't know if it's reversible, but there are claims that it can be reversed. And I wholeheartedly believe that we start being more aware of what we consume. One of the things I want to talk about is makeup, cosmetics, lotions, and stuff. We know about like paraben-free, sulfate-free. There is an app called Think Dirty, and it's amazing. It rates cosmetics and skincare items if they're clean or not. I highly recommend that. Also, just make sure you shop the perimeter at the stores, try to avoid any processed foods if you are able to, or minimize it. Change out your plastic plateware to glass. Don't heat in plastic. And then start a garden. You know that you're not using pesticides. You know it's not being exposed to plastics. Avoid avocados from Mexico, right? I'm not like the epitome and poster child for clean eating, clean consumption. I still will have my Bush's baked beans. You guys, I love it, right? I will occasionally use a cake mix. I will still buy Pillsbury crescents. But the progress I've made over the last 5 years have been awesome. I'm very proud of myself. I'm very proud of how conscious I am with what my children consume. My husband is very conscious about that too. And talking about my husband, I want you to understand that now that you have a diagnosis of PCOS, you have to find a partner who will understand that you have this condition. And what's hard about it is, like I said, the symptoms. Let's go back up here. Mood changes, sleep problems, depression, weight gain, fatigue. That's just stuff that we go through as women, right? And we just thought it was us, and this is how we are. Our hormones are out of whack. That's what we say. We just think we're just women and our hormones are out of whack and this is how we are. But actually the underlying cause could be inflammation, could be insulin resistance, it could be adrenal, right? And now we have to take care of ourselves. We have to be strong enough to say, I need a break. I need to rest. I don't want to exacerbate any of these symptoms. Because what happens is if you don't rest, you're continually making the inflammation worse. You're continually increasing your cortisol that causes the inflammation, the stress that exacerbates everything else, right? The insulin, everything else. You have to rest. You have to know when to tell your family that you need to take a break. And it's going to be hard for them because they're going to be like, well, you never did it before and you just worked through it. Yeah, that was the wrong move. Definitely the wrong move. To manage your PCOS, you have to be able to learn to rest, make those dietary changes, and really get a lot of support. It's very invisible. People, if you're trying to lose weight, you might be judged for, eating a salad and not being able to lose weight. Well, you can because you have insulin resistance. You might have inflammation. You might have other things going on. The tiredness, the mood changes, the sleep problems, those are all real things. In fact, there's a lady who, one of her goals is to study PCOS and sleep problems because it's so prevalent with people dealing with PCOS. I mean, I get horrible sleep all the time. Like, I never, ever get good sleep, ever. But yeah, find a partner that will understand, or take them with you to get the diagnosis. All these things that you're feeling are real and they need to understand that you have to have a break. If you have a hard time sitting and relaxing, just call on me. I'm really good at relaxing and doing nothing these days. Trust me. I'm here for you if you need to talk about it or if you need to vent. Please let me know. Thanks for listening to this. I know it was a long one, but I hope it was informative. And then on to the next podcast. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.